Hello everyone, back tuning into today's first video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days, or today's first video, which will take us to around the 8th, 9th of January, so going into the first week to 10 days of the new month, and also the new year, with the week to 10 day video time frame. Now, and also we'll be able to extend out beyond that with the extended GFS and ECM ensembles. They run to around a couple of weeks. Have a look at CFSV2 at the end of the video for the next 4 weeks, taking us well in towards the latter part of January. So, before I do anything else, I'm going to say a big thank you and give a shout out to our latest donor. So, I've had a donation through PayPal from John Hall. So John Hall has become Gazlovi's latest donor. So a big thank you to John for doing that. John is a poster on the Weather Outlook forum as well. So don't forget to check out Weather Outlook forum if you would like to do that. It's a great forum, nice community of weather enthusiasts over there. So, a big thank you to John Hall for our latest donation. If you'd like to become a donor for Gazlovi's and have a mention in videos, and all you need to do is come to the Gazlovi's PayPal page, you sign in to your PayPal account, and then you can give whatever donation you would like to Gazlovi's. You're helping us to pay for the website, Gazlovi's.com, and keep content online. So that's how you do it, and you will get a mention in videos as long as you want one. One or two people have chosen to stay anonymous. That's absolutely fine if that's what you'd like. There's no problem with that at all. We'll just say thank you to this anonymous person. Leave a little note when you make your donation. You will get an email as well, and we'll check to make sure that you do want to mention in the videos. And that's it. That's absolutely great. So thank you to everybody for doing that. Also, there's Patreon. So this is Gazlovi's Patreon page. We've got 67 patrons right now. So hello and a big thank you to our 67 patrons. If you'd like to become a patron for Gazlovi's, all you need to do is come to the Gazlovi's Patreon page. You sign up for a Patreon account, assuming you don't already have one. Then you give an ongoing monthly donation. It could be anything from $1 a month upwards to Gazlovi's, and you pool in with all of the other patrons, and so that is how you become a patron for Gazlovi's. Big thank you to all of our patrons. Big thank you to all of our donors, and a special thank you to latest donor, John Hall, for your donation. Thank you so much, John, for doing that for Gazlovi's. Right, let's start with the stratosphere then. So this is the latest in terms of the GFS temperature forecast for 10 HPA over the Arctic and excuse me, the North Pole, where we've got these blue and purple colours. Those are the cold temperatures that we've got at 10 HPA. That's kind of like the polar vortex at its roots over the Arctic and the North Pole. Where we've got these green and yellow colours around the edges, that is a warmer temperature at 10 HPA. And we're looking to get a sudden stratospheric warming going. If we want colder weather later in the winter, will probably have to be followed by a sudden stratospheric warming this year, because the overall default setup seems to be for this winter relatively mild again. So you're going to need something to force the pattern into blocking and colder conditions. That will probably be a sudden stratospheric warming. That's where we lift the temperature up dramatically. Can lift up as much as sort of 60, 70, 80 degrees within a few days at 10 HPA and infiltrate back to that warm area into the North Pole. Right, so let's have a look at what GFS is forecasting for the next couple of weeks. Then we start off with these blue and purple colours. Those are cold temperatures at 10 HPA over the Arctic, and particularly on our side of the Arctic, actually, particularly on the Greenland and Scandinavian side of the Arctic. Running through, well, a bit of warming taking place across Siberia there on the 2nd of January. That's probably not quite reaching sudden stratospheric warming thresholds, but it is a fairly pronounced warming of the stratosphere over Siberia. It's having a job, though, to move in towards the Arctic itself. So up to around the 5th of January, when again the warming sort of intensifies further, 5th, 6th of January, it's mostly over Siberia, not really moving into the Arctic or the North Pole. So let's see how intense this warming gets. So it does intensify even more as we get through to the 7th Excuse me again, got a real tickle in my throat today from that nasty flu that I had a couple of weeks ago. Although I'm feeling not too bad, really. It's just after effects of that bug I had a couple of weeks ago. We're up to 7th of January, and we've got these orange colours here over the Siberian part of the Arctic. This is almost reaching southern stratospheric warming type temperature levels, perhaps just a little bit short of that still. Really want the red colours to appear to say that you've reached southern stratospheric warming temperature levels, but it's getting very close to it. Mostly still over Siberia though, not really moving in towards the Arctic and the North Pole. And what actually happens as we get into the extended range with 6 o'clock GFS running, so this warming just sort of fades out then. Never really makes it into the Arctic and into the pole. And as we go in towards the middle of January, keep these blue and purple colours rooted over the top of the North Pole and over the Arctic as well. So that is pronounced, yes, warming up the stratosphere over Siberia, just perhaps a little bit shy of a southern stratospheric warming at 10 HPA. But very close to it, but mostly confined to Siberia and eventually towards Canada. Never really make it into the North Pole itself. Probably just push the polar vortex around a little bit and displaces it, but certainly not a killing blow up to the middle of January for the polar vortex. It's still there, still well in business at its roots in the stratosphere. Polar vortex still in business into middle of January at its roots in the stratosphere. The southern stratospheric warming does not sort of really knock it on the head and kill it off. So we'll keep looking, and of course this warming might be upgraded more. This is around sort of a week to 10 days time, so we may see further upgrades of this warming over Siberia, and we will keep an eye on it over the coming days. Central England temperature is looking like this. So the CET for December 2019 is currently standing at 5.9, which is an anomaly of 1.2 degrees above average, provisional to the 28th. I think it's touch and go whether this is going to beat November. So November came in at 6.2, actually a little bit colder than average. December is at 5.9, just a little bit short of it. It's a very mild day out there today, and the coming days aren't going to be cold. They're going to be relatively mild, so this can be expected to tick up a bit. It might get to around 6.2 by New Year's Eve, but they have to factor into account we're probably going to get a downwards correction, particularly because of that frosty opening to December that we have. When we have a cold start to a month, the downwards correction tends to be a little bit bigger, I've noticed. So in the end, we'll probably finish up around 6.0, I would have thought, with this, once we take into account the downwards correction. Maybe even 5.9, around where we are actually today. Could be where we finish up once downwards corrections are taken into account. It will be an above average month, though. It will be a milder than average December and a milder than average start to the winter of 2019-2020. Remember, December average is quite interesting because it's the same actually for 61 to 1990 as it is for 81 to 2010. So whichever average we take, it's going to be a milder than average December. It'll be interesting to see where we finish up. There is still the outside chance we might finish up above November's CET, but I think the chances of that, as the days are ticking by, we're not getting up into the sixes, although it probably will be at 6.0 tomorrow, which today's very mild weather is taken into account. But I think the chances of beating November are probably receding as the days are going by, but it's certainly going to be quite a close run thing. These are the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. We're looking at Liverpool today. So the red line is 30-year upper air temperature average for Liverpool. We're starting off very substantially above average. Look how mild it is with the upper air temperatures. They do drop down a little bit by New Year's Eve, and then they lift back up again into the opening days of the year. By the 4th of January, though, we have got a little bit of a cold snap actually showing up. This crept up on us, but just for around 24 hours, it does go quite cold actually as we get in towards the weekend, the coming weekend. Doesn't last for more than a day, really, and then we're back into these milder conditions again as we go through the first week into the second week of January. Not as mild as it is right now. So that's where we are right now. Very, very mild. That's where we are from the first to the second week of January. Not as mild as it is right now, the upper air temperature, but still above average, with just a little bit of a brief cold snap sometime around the 4th of January. Precipitation-wise, lots of dry weather. So we are in a much drier phase now. That part of winter forecast is going quite well, I think. We did say that the start of winter is likely to be very wet. We was expecting a wet December with further flooding problems. And then we said the trend should be towards drier conditions as we progress through the winter. So that side of things is working out quite well. It's just the temperature side I'm a little bit concerned about. But anyway, lots of dry weather coming up through to the new year. And even as we go from the first into the second week of January, there's no real sign of a protracted wet spell. There are a few precipitation spikes there, but not all that many of them. They are quite small as well. Remember, this version of New West Central does tend to overdo the precipitation spikes a little bit, I think, actually. So it's for Liverpool, so it's one of the wetter places of the country, right on the Irish Sea there, very exposed to Atlantic weather fronts and areas of low pressure. So I think we can say we are going into we are now in a much, much drier phase of weather. So if you was fed up with the deluge that started at the end of September, went on all the way through the autumn and into December too, then I think we have turned the corner on that for the time being. Of course, it might turn very wet again in a week or so's time, in a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks' time. It might turn very wet again. But for now, we are definitely having a protracted, not just a few days, but a protracted spell of drier weather. So that can only be good news, especially for those flood-hit areas. Temperature anomalies from the 29th of December to the 6th of January, above average. Going to be a mild average week, not as mild as it is across Scandinavia. Look how exceptionally mild it is for Scandinavia in the weekend. 8 to 10 degrees above average, extraordinarily mild there. In the UK, so we're around sort of a degree, 2 degrees perhaps above average. Going to be mild, and that does include a little bit of a cold snap sometime around the 4th of January, of course. Excuse me again. Precipitation anomaly is much drier than average, so this confirms what we've just been saying. We are in a much drier phase of weather. And yes, particularly for England and Wales, we do see very substantially drier than average conditions. In fact, chances are some parts of England and Wales will probably get no measurable rain at all within the next week, 29th of December to the 6th of January. So that's how the GFS is looking for New Year's Day. High pressure is dominating the weather on New Year's Day, although we have got these southwest winds in the far north and west of Scotland bringing some showery rain to the northwest of Scotland perhaps, but most places are under high pressure. New Year's Day should be a mainly dry day. That high pressure does weaken a little bit at the end of the week, so we do bring a band of rain in off the Atlantic on Friday the 3rd of January. That's on a cold front, and behind that winds swing into the north. This is a little cold snap I was talking about, but initially we'll probably have a band of rain moving southwards and eastwards. I suspect the rain turns light and patchy as it gets into the south and southeast, when it turns brighter but colder, maybe with wintry showers coming in towards Scotland. Very quickly, any northerly is cut off as these high pressure ridges back in from off the Atlantic, but that will be within quite cold air. So what happens next weekend is that it starts off perhaps with a cold northerly wind and some snow showers across northern and eastern parts of Scotland. Then the high pressure comes in, settles things down, but it will probably be frosty under that high pressure next weekend. So we may get some frost at last next weekend. However, already by Sunday the 5th of January, we're re-establishing a milder southwesterly wind in the north. So Scotland gets back into west-southwesterly bursts, turns milder probably by Sunday. England and Wales could still be quite cold under that ridge of high pressure. Heading up towards day 10, so we're back to the situation we're currently in, really. High pressure is to our south, low pressure is up to the north with a very strong polar vortex around Greenland and towards Iceland. We're in these west-southwest winds. It'll be mild, especially so to the north. Could still be a little bit of frost and fog down in the south. Day 10 and beyond, we start to rebuild the high pressure again. It does weaken a little bit there day 10, which is the 8th of January, but by the 9th, again, we're back into this re-establishing area of high pressure. That's how things look. On the 10th of January, lots of high pressure domination centred over Germany, probably bringing quite a chilly flow off the continent by this point. So I suspect frosts again getting more widespread there by Friday the 10th of January. And no real changes actually as we end this GFS run, which gets us to Tuesday the 14th of January. The high pressure is still dominating. Looks like it's trying to ease itself up towards Scandinavia as well. You'll notice around the back of the high, we are starting to pull down some really quite cold air into the far northeast of Europe. There's the upper air temperature showing a cold plunge sinking down the eastern side of Europe by the 14th of January. So that's being kept at bay by the position of this ridge, which is over the country, just into the south of Norway and Denmark. So if that high pressure was to go further north, there is a cold pool established across eastern Europe that we could pull in to the west of Europe on easterly winds if the high pressure was to go further north. And of course we can't say where that high pressure goes beyond this, because this is as far as we go with the GFS run. But certainly that is a proper cold plunge moving into the east and northeast of Europe by the end of this GFS run. GM's looking like that. So again, mostly high pressure dominated on New Year's Day, mainly dry. Could be some frost early and late. By Thursday, we're reintroducing the southwesterlies, particularly to the north of the country. All areas turning milder, but especially so in the north. Then in comes that cold front on Friday. So that brings a band of rain, probably turns patchy as it gets into the south. It introduces colder air from the north. That's Saturday, high pressure ridging back in off the Atlantic, cutting off that northerly. But it will be quite cold under that ridge, and I would expect there's widespread frost next weekend. Away from Scotland anyway, where it does start to turn milder with those southwests. But for England and Wales, definitely there's a chance of some pretty hard frost, I think, in the coming weekend. And then we move through into towards day 10. Southwesterlies are coming back again, so it starts turning milder, and that's how we finish up with the GFS run, with the GM run I should say, on the 8th of January, back under high pressure and relatively mild at this point. And then the ECMWF looks like that, so New Year's Day looking mostly dry under a ridge, then southwesterlies turn us quite mild on Thursday, 2nd of January. Cold front moves across the country on Friday the 3rd, brings a band of rain which could turn like patchy southeast, but does introduce some colder air from the north. It's only a brief swipe of colder air though, as the ridge builds back in from the Atlantic, turns us mainly dry, but quite cold under that high pressure. Chance of frost during the coming weekend. This is Sunday the 5th, so the ECM has this high pressure more centrally located over the UK. So even Scotland could be quite frosty still up to Sunday, 5th of January. It's just in the extreme northwest that we got those southwest winds. So that's a slightly colder weekend next weekend for most of the country. By Monday the 6th, we have got a milder southwesterly for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but England and Wales is still under this ridge, which is now centred over Germany and Poland. So probably still cold and frosty, maybe some freezing fog even across England and Wales there next Monday. And then moving up towards day 10, so even on Tuesday the 7th of January, away from Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it is milder with southwesterlies, England and Wales still look quite cold, dry and frosty. The ridge by then is moving from Poland to Ukraine, so going a long way away from us, but it is still exerting an influence, and we're still pulling in quite cold air from off the continent. By day 10, that's how we're looking. It's Wednesday the 8th of January, the high pressure across Eastern Europe. But even then, I think it's probably still quite cold, actually, with the ECM. Although the winds have gone into the south, I think the source of the air is probably still quite cold and continental. I suspect the ECM might be a little bit of a cold outlier in terms of frosty, dry conditions. But, of course, we'll see. These are the options are on the table within the ECM ensembles for day 10, which is the 8th of January. So you have 13 members of the ECM ensembles with a big area of high pressure extending from the Atlantic into the UK and Northern Europe. Low pressure is up to the north. Jet stream is up there too. That's mostly dry and settled for day 10, the 8th of January. We have 9 members of the ECM ensembles with high pressure centered over just a little bit to our east. That's spring wind in upper continent, so it could be mostly dry but maybe quite frosty with that option. 9 with high pressure over top of the country, so that's mainly dry and fine. 8, including the operational and the ECM control run, the operational run, I should say, the run we've just been looking at. That one has high pressure just a little bit further northward, so slightly more of a southeasterly to almost easterly influence from the air. So again, that does suggest that even up to day 10, quite cold with the ECM operational run. 7 that are Atlantic driven, low pressure up to the north, high pressure to the south. They've got a milder westerly flow, probably bringing a little bit of rain. And then 5 with high pressure centred more or less over top of the country again, just here. So I think the ECM ensembles are very much favouring high pressure continuing through the first week of January. A lot of dry weather, therefore, through the first week to 10 days of January is likely. And it could be a little bit cold, actually, this first week of January. Certainly for England and Wales from a frost and fog type perspective. In 2 weeks' time, these are the options that we've got. This is the 13th of January. So 25 members of the ECM ensembles have high pressure centred over or just a little bit to our east again. So that's nearly up to mid of January and dominated by high pressure, mainly dry and could be quite frosty and cold. 14, including the ECM control run, that have this high pressure moving to Scandinavia. So with those, we're sort of bringing in a southeasterly, probably not a direct sort of easterly from Russia, but probably not all that far away from really quite cold weather there by the middle of January with those 14. And then a minority option, 12, to have low pressure dominating to the north, high pressure to the south. Of course, that's a much milder option as we bring in westerly winds. This first half of January, after so much wet weather, could be notably dry. The only question is over the temperature, and that will be determined by exactly where the high pressure is sitting. But it could be quite cold, actually, this early part of January, or this first half of January, particularly for England and Wales, with quite a lot of frost. And as I say, the main thing is that we're switching from so much wet weather into something an awful lot drier. Let's just have a look at CFSV2 before we go. So these are 500 millibar heights broken down into week periods. The first week period takes us from the 29th of December to the 4th of January. The coming week is dominated by high pressure sitting over the country. Low pressure is pushed up to the north. It's mainly dry and fine, quite mild though, although it will be a bit cold at times down in the south. Week 2 is the 5th to the 11th of January with high pressure bands slipping southwards. Low pressure getting closer towards Scotland, so turning a bit more south in the far north of the country. However, most places still dominated by high pressure. That would be mild or very mild. And then all changed for week 3, which is the 12th to the 18th of January, as low pressure is coming in off the Atlantic. It looks unsettled, that. Bands of rain pushing in off the Atlantic, quite wet then as we go into the middle of January. Remember, there's very little sign of that within the ECM ensembles, though. And then week 4 is the 19th to the 25th of January. Again, back to very unsettled conditions. Low pressure is dominating. It's still mild, though, as winds are in from the west or from the southwest. So this is looking like it's going to be quite a big change, but we have started. It's underway, and looks like it's going to carry on certainly through the first week of January, possibly further into January than that. We're going towards much drier conditions, and it's a big change compared to what we've had over the past few months. So if you're fed up with the deluge, then it's good news. The only question mark is about the temperature, the overall feel of the weather. Where will this high pressure go ultimately? At the moment, it's giving us very mild conditions. Will the high pressure eventually get us to somewhere where it's able to pull in some colder weather, or will we actually stay relatively mild, or will we just have a variable mix of sort of milder days and also colder, frostier days? We shall see, and all will be revealed, of course, in weeks ahead. Right, so tomorrow I've got another week's NAB update coming up for you then. But later on this afternoon, probably around 5, 6 o'clock this evening, we're going to have the E70F, Metro France, and DWD seasonal model update for December. I'm quite late with that this month, but I will get that up for you this evening. Right then, so that's all for now, and thanks for watching.